At 5.
In Pittsburgh, this is Channel 11, the news station.
Good afternoon, I'm Bob Cochran. In the news today, Lieutenant Calley's on a lecture tour, and HUD has an answer for those area rent strikers. But right at the top of today's news, our nation's unemployment rate held steady in February at 8.2%. At the same time, at the same point it was in January, and that leaves 7 million Americans out of work. That steady rate seemed to support President Ford's economic advisors, who had been predicting that the unemployment rate would peak out at about 8.5% this year. The unemployment rate had jumped a full percentage point during January, and some economists have been predicting that the rate will top out at over 9%.
And as you might have guessed, the computing of those monthly unemployment figures is a big task for Uncle Sam. Just how it is figured out is the subject of this special report from Gordon Graham.
The nationwide rate of unemployment is measured by a monthly poll of 58,000 selected households. Each month, interviewers from the Census Bureau knock on doors across the country and ask a few simple questions.
And what was Mr. Marley doing most of last week? Working or something else?
He wasn't working.
The names, addresses, and interview responses are kept secret. This interview was simulated by Census Bureau employees. The questions may be answered by any member of a household who is 16 or older.
He had a job, but he was laid off.
Workers on strike or on planned seasonal layoffs, or those who are not actively looking for jobs, are not included in the monthly reports. The completed interview forms are sent to a census facility where the information is put on microfilm. The microfilm data is then transferred to a computer tape. The computer tapes are programmed to print out the information needed for the final tabulation and analysis by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The Bureau claims that the margin of error in the final figures is less than 0.2%. The day before the unemployment figures are released to the public, the secret information is given to the White House, and the President is personally informed. The next morning, the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases the figures to the public. Gordon Graham, NBC News, Washington.
In related news, Allegheny Airlines and TWA are both cutting back on their workforces because of an ongoing drop in passenger volume that started last November. Now, Allegheny has already furloughed 600 employees, including over 60 pilots. A spokesman there says there are going to be more layoffs. However, he would not say just how many. Now, at TWA, they're laying off about 500 reservations agents and flight attendants on top of the 700 employees that are already off the job. They say there will probably be some rehiring with stepped-up summer business.
And President Ford said last night that unemployment could hit a high of 9% before the current recession is over. And he made it clear that we should not expect any improvement until at least the end of the year. He also indicated he might consider even new tax reductions over and above what he has already proposed.
What does it cost to make ham more appealing? Omelets more delicious? Salads more attractive? The truth is, with cling peaches, it doesn't cost much, because even though they're fancy, cling peaches are not expensive.
Always a good value at your Kroger supermarkets.
A&P's 8 o'clock custom ground bean coffee is just $2.09 for the 3-pound bag with newspaper coupon. Actually 80 cents a bag less than last week. 8 o'clock coffee, 3-pound bag, only $2.09. Imagine. And here's another terrific buy. Family pack of pork chops, only 99 cents a pound. These quartered loin pork chops, 9 to 11 per package, are a real economy buy at only 99 cents a pound, and only at A&P Wheel.
There's a place in the country where folks can see life on the farm as it used to be. Bob Evans down on the farm.
Like vegetables from our garden, Bob Evans Farm sausage is the finest quality, and it's really fresh. Shipped overnight from our farms to your favorite store.
Try Bob Evans sausage. If it's not the best you ever tasted, I'll give your money back.
Bob Evans down on the farm.
from the time you're his age
To the time you're my age. To the time you're my age.
you'll probably have toothaches.
So you should know that Oragel temporarily relieves a toothache. And Oragel D does the same for denture pain.
And baby Oragel relieves teething pain.
Oragel, for everyone with teeth. And those who used to have them.
And those who are getting them.
The Oragel family. Fast relief of toothache, denture pain, and teething pain.
Police in Israel have found 5 more bodies in the wreckage of that Tel Aviv hotel that was attacked by Arab terrorists earlier this week. Now that brings the total dead to at least 19 in that assault and the Israeli counterattack. A police spokesman says that still more victims of that guerrilla raid may be buried in the explosion's rubble.
Cambodian government forces didn't make any headway overnight in their efforts to push back a rebel force that is just northeast of the capital at Phnom Penh. Rebel shells are still ripping through that city and its airport, but the American airlift of food and ammunition to Phnom Penh has not been interrupted. Back in this country, in a nationally televised news conference last night, President Ford said he would ask Congress for more financial help for Cambodia. Tom Brokaw reports.
President Ford made a strong appeal for his request to give Cambodia additional aid, saying that to walk away now would leave a deep sense of shame in this country. Several times during his news conference, the president raised the prospect of a bloodbath in Cambodia if the additional aid is not voted.
It's an unbelievable horror story. And if we can hold out, and I think the prospects are encouraging, then I think we will avoid that kind of massacre and innocent murdering of people who really don't deserve that kind of treatment.
President Ford listed the 6 American unsuccessful efforts to negotiate peace in Cambodia, and then said if the Cambodian government can just hold out a little bit longer, there is the possibility that the next negotiation could be successful. Tom Brokaw, NBC News at the White House.
Well, the reaction from Congress has been generally mixed over whether or not the United States should pump millions of dollars more into the Lon Nol government. Meanwhile, in South Vietnam, thousands of government troops backed by armored vehicles poured into the Central Highlands today trying to pry open a key highway. According to the Saigon government, the North Vietnamese are cutting vital roads as a forerunner to a big offensive.
A Harrison Township mother has been hit with a 1 to 5 year jail term for prostituting her 2 adolescent daughters. Criminal Court Judge Samuel Strauss handed down that sentence yesterday against 41-year-old Carol Kramer of Union Avenue, and the judge told her, "It's a pleasure to send you to jail." Mrs. Kramer had been accused of prostituting her 13 and 14-year-old girls 3 or 4 times a night over the span of a year. She pleaded guilty to promoting prostitution, and she told the court that she thought it would be better for her daughters to have sex in the home instead of on the street. The McGee Women's Hospital spokesman says that fears of strokes because of those birth control pills have virtually no foundation. That report appears in the American Medical Association's journal, but Pittsburgh Dr. Douglas Thompson and a lot of his colleagues are taking issue with that report.
Actually, if a woman wants to take the oral contraceptives and does not have high blood pressure and is not a heavy smoker, she will have virtually no chance of having any kind of problem of this sort because of her oral contraceptives. So that by selecting whether you take contraceptives or not according to your blood pressure and your smoking habits, you can stay away from the stroke problem. But even if you don't pay any attention to smoking and blood pressure, the likelihood of having a stroke because of oral contraceptives is very, very small. Meanwhile, you're preventing pregnancy, which is your real goal, very effectively. And if you do get pregnant, then you will have problems too, unfortunately, which perhaps are even worse than the problems that the pill creates. So it's a very safe medication. I like to say it's safer than the water you drink it with, because you can get typhoid fever, hepatitis, and so forth from drinking water.
Dr. Thompson says that he doesn't have any qualms with the actual study, but he does have with the interpretations being blown out of proportion.
Here's further proof that some people are reaping a financial harvest from Watergate. H.R. Haldeman, former President Nixon's right-hand man, has just agreed to a televised interview on his years in the White House. For that interview, he reportedly will be paid $25,000. Former White House counsel John Dean continues to pick up handsome fees on the lecture circuit. Speaking at the Robert Kennedy Memorial Symposium in Kansas City, Dean said blackmail demands on the White House by Watergate figures were what finally convinced him to disclose his knowledge of the cover-up. There's some new and fascinating information on death that has just been released by a Chicago psychiatrist. Dr. Elizabeth Ross says several hundred patients who have been revived after being declared legally dead say death feels good. Most of them, and we quote here, say it's a feeling of peace and wholeness. Now, Dr. Ross said the sophisticated medical skills needed to revive the dead have only been available in recent years, and it's interesting to note that one of the most common complaints among the once dead is that many of them resented the attempts to bring them back to life. Not any one of them say they are afraid to die again. Now, the doctor concludes from all of this that in the future, people will not be so afraid to die. Former Army Lieutenant William Calley made his first stop on the lecture tour last night. Calley, whose conviction in the My Lai massacre was overturned, told an audience at Murray State College in Kentucky that troops he led in Vietnam were involved in terror warfare. Here's more on that story.
Fewer than 24 protesters came to the speech. They held their signs quietly in the balcony. No chants and no booing. In fact, all they objected to was that Calley was being paid $2,000 to speak. On the other hand, most of the audience, about 2,000 people, welcomed Calley with warm applause and supported him when it was announced news cameras would not be permitted to film his speech. The lecture was the first Calley has ever given. It was lengthy, almost 2 hours, and wide-ranging, a narrative on his actions at My Lai and reflections on how his views have changed.
The frustration and the bitterness is seeing an adversary who is fighting for his homeland and his country and will go to any extremes to protect it. And many days you come face to face with, damn, are they right or am I right?
William Calley's speech was warmly received by his predominantly student audience. Many of the people here said they felt sorry for him, that they believed he was indeed used as a scapegoat in the My Lai incident. At the same time, though, they said they were angry because the government did indeed hide what had happened. In all, they said, nobody won in that conflict. Mike Jackson, NBC News, Murray, Kentucky.
Now, the Army is currently appealing a federal judge's ruling that upset Calley's conviction in the death of Vietnamese civilians at My Lai in 1971. Well, in most instances, it's women invading male bastions that necessitate substituting the word person in job titles. But in Seattle, Washington, that situation has been reversed. The 36 members of the Seattle Parking Patrol no longer will be called meter maids, and it's all because Terry Hinman has been sworn in as the first male in the ticket unit. So from now on, all members will be called, you guessed it, meter persons.
What's Terry's uniform look like? All right. Those rent strikers at the Liberty Park project out in East Liberty have taken their case to the Pittsburgh office of the U.S. Housing and Urban Development Agency. And HUD official Charles Lieberth says that that whole project would fold without those new rent increases.
It is so important that if the rent increase is not sustained, which it will be sustained, it has to, the development could go into default because it shows a deficit financing every year. The management group, little by little, has reduced the annual deficit. They're doing a fine job, but without this rent increase, that development certainly would go into default. But the thing to keep in mind, the $2,200 rent increase that we approved last September has really been the first rent increase since 1971. And I think everybody is aware with the increased maintenance costs, the increased labor costs, the increased utilities costs, that it is a justified rent increase. I think we have to look at that very realistically.
Now, the leader of that rent strike, Joseph Jackson, says that if agreement cannot be reached with HUD and the Ohio firm which owns the property, his group is going to take that matter to court. In sports now, that ECAC Southern Division basketball playoff gets underway tonight in Morgantown. The first game's at 7 between George Washington and Georgetown, and then it's Pitt against West Virginia. Tonight's winners will battle tomorrow to see who goes to the NCAA. Also tomorrow, the Pirates kick off their exhibition season in a contest with Cincinnati. And a little bit closer to home, the Penguins tomorrow will be taking on the Philadelphia Flyers right here at our arena.
Right now, we conclude our two-part series on carpet cleaning. On Inflation Buster, we have Bob James with some carpet cleaning hints.
Many people like to save money by cleaning their carpets themselves. They either have small cleaners of their own or they go out and rent them. Now, there basically are 4 cleaning methods available to you: the aerosol foam, rotary machines, rinse and vacuum, and steam machines. All use detergents and varying amounts of water. Glenn Muller, in the carpet cleaning business 10 years, has some tips for you do-it-yourselfers.
Well, if you rent a steam type cleaner, what you have to be careful of is that you do not over-soak your carpeting, because if you over-soak it, naturally you could cause mildew or carpet rot over a period of time.
What about the aerosols or the small brush system?
Well, any type of chemical that you purchase, I suggest that you take it and mix a portion of it as the directions tell you to, and pour it into a clear glass dish and let it sit overnight. Now, if it dries in an oily substance, you can see it's going to cause rapid resoiling, whereas if it dries to a powder, that you can easily vacuum off your carpet when it dries.
What about the rotary brush type?
Well, I myself do not prefer it because when you rotate the brush with the chemical onto your carpeting, it is causing slight pow distortion and cleaning only one side of the carpet fibers and driving your dirt and your soil down deeper into your fibers. Home cleaning is mostly a stopgap measure, and most carpet manufacturers request that you have your carpeting cleaned professionally at least every 12 to 18 months.
Well, that's it. Good luck to you with whatever method you use.
West Penn Power may be in for a battle in its latest try for a $25 million rate hike. A coalition of labor and consumer groups has a petition with 3,500 names on it opposing the increase and demanding that evening hearings be held on the request. That petition has already been passed on to the Public Utilities Commission.
Well, the figures show that the bank robbery rate in our Pittsburgh area has been going up almost as much as the cost of living. The FBI says there have been 51 bank robberies in the county so far just this year. No one's been injured yet, but with a lot of those bandits packing pistols, that record is really a miracle.
This holdup man was so well disguised that these bank camera pictures wouldn't have identified him had he gotten away. But he ran into a policeman on the way out and panicked. He became so excited that he didn't realize that his gun wasn't firing, so he just kept aiming and squeezing the trigger at the officer outside. Once in clear view, the police officer brought the gunman down with a single shot to the ankle. The gunman is now serving time in federal prison. Criminologists say that motives for violent crimes like this one are common and foreseeable.
I would think some of it is very instant kind of gratification, that they desire something and they want it and they have the means of getting it. If they have a gun, for example, they're non-negotiators. They can't negotiate for something. You can get money in a lot of other ways than robbing a bank.
If they're non-negotiators, how do law officials get them to surrender, get them to give up?
I think that's a very great risk, that they may not be able to negotiate a surrender either. And so that may be a real problem there. On the other hand, if they're simply people who are in a bad situation, generally law-abiding, but happen to be committing a crime of some kind, then these people are probably going to surrender fairly easily.
What's the best advice you can give the victim, someone who's looking down the barrel of a gun?
I think that the common sense thing to do is to do what you're told. I think when you're looking in that end of a gun, I think that probably the best thing is to cooperate and not try to be a hero.
Dr. Loisel, by the way, does not think that there's any relationship between the current rise in the crime rate and the rate of unemployment. Well, it's weather time. Are you ready?
I don't really mind this. You know, I really like rainy days.
Well, it's kind of a mite miserable out there.
You know, it sort of looks like a Monday, but it's Friday.
Some good stuff coming up later on. But right now, let's take a look to see what the weather looked like this morning. Okay? Dark and wet. That about covers it, doesn't it? Temperature right now is 41 degrees, relative humidity 83%, the barometer 29.72, and it's falling. And the wind right now is out of the southwest at 12 miles an hour. You're going to see a change there because it will be windy this afternoon, and we'll have the possibility of some thunder showers as we go for a high near, yeah, that's right, 50 degrees. Much colder tomorrow, a chance of snow flurries. Windy and turning colder tonight. The rain will change to snow, and that's why there's a chance of snow flurries for tomorrow when we have a high of about 35. Now, taking a look at Ken Phillips' 5-day weather board, turning to Sunday. Typical March day, cold, breezy, temperatures about 30 degrees. Monday looks a little better, temperatures still below the usual range, but we will have some periods of sunshine and a high in the mid-30s. Tuesday, another sunny day with a high in the upper 30s. And Ken, of course, is going to have a complete update on Newswatch tonight at 6.
I can't wait until this innovation hits Pittsburgh. If the computer and the supermarket industries have their way, we're all going to be whisked through the checkout counter with a new pricing system. George Lewis has more.
The striped patches that have begun appearing on items sold in supermarkets are visible signs of a plan to eliminate a sound dear to most merchants, the ringing of cash registers. Stores will resound with the beeping and whirring of electronic equipment if the computer companies and the supermarket industry get their way. At the checkout counter, the store clerk doesn't have to ring up the price of individual items. She merely sweeps them past the scanner. In the twinkling of a laser beam, the computer reads the code on each container and figures the price. Customers get an itemized list showing what they've purchased and how much they've paid. Only a handful of supermarkets have the equipment now, although computer companies expect to equip thousands of stores in the next few years. Most customers here seem to like the computer checkout system.
It's faster and it's accurate. I check it up after I can't keep track of it over here, but I check it up at home. It's always accurate. I like you to go beep, beep, beep.
While advertising that electronic checkout is more accurate and speedier, the stores don't publicize one other thing. Electronic checkout is more profitable. By moving customers through here faster, this supermarket has increased its sales volume by $5,000 a week. George Lewis, NBC News, Fort Worth, Texas.
That could be the greatest thing since sliced bread. 2 men from our area have been convicted, another acquitted on federal charges that the trio tried to blow up a business partner with a bomb and collect his life insurance. Kenneth Matthews of Castle Shannon and Francis Ferry of North Versailles were both found guilty of charges that Matthews paid Ferry to plant a bomb in the car of Matthews' former business associate. Now, the third defendant, Joseph Laverich of Greensburg, was acquitted after he testified that he did not know that the radio device he sold to Ferry was going to be used in a bomb.
We'll be checking on the rest of the day's developments in a moment, but first let's take a time out for this quick break.